day everyone, I am Michael Cabalito, and for today's lecture video, I will be tackling the curious and adventurous spirit of Alfred Russel Wallace. This report will include his biography, his early life and education, the life-changing friendship and adventures in the Amazon, the Malay Archipelago, Alfred Wallace and Charles Darwin, and his other scientific contribution. To begin with, let's dive into his biography. Alfred Russel Wallace is one of England's greatest scientists and was born 200 years ago on the 8th of January 1823 in Llanbadach, Monmouthshire, Wales. He is known for being a naturalist, humanist, geographer, social and political commentator, explorer and collector, anthropologist, biologist, and an illustrator. He is the eighth of 9 children born to Thomas Vere Wallace and Mary Ann Greenough, and grew up in modest circumstances in rural Wales and then moved to Hertford, Hertfordshire, England. There, he attended Hertford Grammar School until 1837, and in unfortunate circumstances, his education was curtailed by the family's worsening financial situation, resulting why he wasn't able to go to a university. He then moved to London, where he attended lectures and read books and treatises at the London Mechanic Institute, where he was exposed to the radical political ideas of the Welsh social reformer Robert Owen and of the English-born political theorist Thomas Paine. In 1844, he was engaged by the collegiate school in Leicester to teach drawing, mapmaking, and surveying, and he spent many hours at the town library reading books, which includes Darwin's Journal, The Voyage of the Beagle, and Charles Lyell's Principles of Geology. At night in 1844, he formed a friendship with a local man and keen naturalist Henry Waller Bates, who introduced him to the methods and delights of collecting beetles. 4 years later, the pair headed to Brazil as self-employed specimen collectors. There, they collect insects and other animal specimens in the Amazon rainforest for their private collection and selling the duplicates to museums and collectors back in Britain to fund the trip. Also through this exploration, Wallace hoped to gather an evidence of the transmutation of species. The two young men amicably parted ways after several joint collecting ventures, where Bates spent 11 years in the region, while Wallace spent a total of 4 years traveling, collecting, mapping, drawing, and writing in the unexplored region of the Amazon River Basin. After more than 4 years collecting, Wallace sailed back to England, but disaster struck on the high seas when his ship caught in fire in the Atlantic and sunk, along with virtually most of his specimens and field notes. During this period, despite having lost almost all the notes from his expedition and financial struggle, he wrote 6 academic papers and 2 books, which is The Palm Trees of the Amazon and Their Uses, and The Narrative of Travels on the Amazon and Rio Negro, both in 1853. From 1854 to 1862, Wallace traveled around the islands of the Malay Archipelago, or East Indies, which make up the modern-day Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. He collected a total of 125,660 specimens, most of which were insects, including more than 84,000 beetles, and 5,000 of those species are new to Western science. 1885, he reached Sawarak and hired a Malay named Ali, also known as Ali Wallace, and became his most trusted assistant that prepared and preserved more than 5,000 specimens of birds. At the same place, he wrote the Sarawak paper and formulated the Sarawak law that explains that new species evolve from existing ones, rather than simply appearing where they are, thus elucidates why species are found near one another in both space and time. His research on geographic distribution of animals among the islands of Malay Archipelago also provided the crucial evidence for his evolutionary theories and led him to devise what soon became known as the Wallace Line, the boundary that separates the fauna of Australia from that of Asia. Accounts of Wallace studies and adventures were eventually published in 1869 and 1870, which includes the contribution to the theory of natural selection and the Malay Archipelago, the land of orangutan and the birds of paradise, which became one of the most popular books of scientific exploration of the 19th century and was praised by the scientists like Darwin, to whom the book was dedicated. In 1858, while feverish and confined to his hut in the island of Ternate, now Indonesia, Wallace had been convinced by his biogeographical research in the Malay Archipelago that evolution was indeed real. In the same year, he sent Darwin a letter outlining his ideas about evolution. The two collaborated and published the book On the Origin of Species in 1859, which Wallace became a co-author, making it one of his standing legacy. To continue, these are some of Wallace's other scientific contributions. First we have is the warning coloration or aposematism. This is one of his contributions to the evolutionary biology of animal coloration. In 1889, Wallace wrote the book Darwinism as a defensive response to the scientific critic of natural selection. He also proposed the Wallace effect or reinforcement, which is a hypothesis that natural selection can contribute to the reproductive isolation of incipient species by encouraging varieties to develop barriers to hybridization. Wallace also wrote the book Man Place in the Universe in 1904, which was the first serious attempt of biologists to evaluate the likelihood of life in other planets. Throughout his life, Wallace was a prolific author, having published 22 books and 747 short pieces. According to Britannica, he was keenly intellectual but no less spiritual, a distinguished scientist and a spokesman for unpopular cause, a gifted naturalist who never lost his boyish enthusiasm for nature, a prolific and lucid writer, a committed socialist, a seeker of truth, and a domestic modest individual. What touched those who knew him was his compassion, his humanity and sympathy, and his lack of pretense or acquired pride. Wallace died in his 91st year and was buried in Russel, Dorset, England. And that would be the end of the discussion of Alfred Russel Wallace, the forgotten man of evolution.